declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
When the Queen speaks,
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
her words are recorded for history.
We have seen throughout Britain and around the world an overwhelming expression of sadness.
Every carefully crafted one of them
The heroism, courage, and sacrifice of those who lost their lives will never be forgotten.
constructed to show a monarch in control.
I pledged my life to the service of our people. I do not regret nor retract one word of it.
Speeches written with personal passion reveal the woman beneath the crown, the Queen, in her own words.
I wish you a Merry Christmas. God bless you all.
There is one time of the year the Queen has the opportunity to pour her own thoughts into a carefully structured yet deeply personal speech, her Christmas message.
Christmas is a Christian festival which celebrates the birth of the Prince of Peace.
The Queen weighs her words extremely carefully, so it's very rare for her to make a speech which is openly emotional. But in things like the Christmas broadcast, there are enormous nuggets of what she really thinks.
It is important to keep discussing issues that concern us all. There can be no more valuable role for our family of nations.
I think the Christmas message is a time when the Queen feels that she is the matriarch of this nation and can impart her wisdom and her sympathy to her people.
For 67 years at 3 p.m. Christmas Day, the Queen's words have been transmitted across Britain and the Commonwealth.
One has only to look at an album of old family photographs to see how much has altered, even within the memory of our own parents and grandparents. Many of us here in Britain have relatives living in other Commonwealth countries, and there are many who were born overseas living here. Because it is Christmas, we are probably thinking of them now.
Even though the Queen's Christmas message only lasts a few minutes, the words are many months in the making. As Charles Anson, the Queen's former press secretary, knows.
It starts literally to have the tiniest bit of shape on the 1st of January of each year. Other members of the family, and particularly Prince Philip, would be consulted. The acceleration of the work really starts in September, when the private secretary to the Queen will start to put together a draft.
The Queen's Christmas message is broadcast across the Commonwealth, a third of the world's population. Every Christmas speech is underpinned by the Queen's moral values.
Now, what she really thinks is often quite old-fashioned. There'll be Christian virtues, be nice to people, treat people well, whatever their race or their religion or their origin. But these are heartfelt sentiments, and they don't date.
They will always be underpinned by the Queen's very strong faith. So every year she will choose a different theme, almost a different topic.
Christ's birth in Bethlehem so long ago remains a powerful symbol of hope for a better future. We all have something to learn from one another, whatever our faith, be it Christian or Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu or Sikh.
If you listen to them, you will find a very strong plea for general conciliation. She is a great conciliator and is asking people to reflect on ways that things can move forward in a calm and sensible way.
May I, in this my 50th Christmas message to you, once again wish every one of you a very happy Christmas.
In her Christmas speeches and public speaking, we see a Queen who is controlled and scripted.
My government will legislate in the interests of everyone in our country.
The Queen's words are written and crafted to strengthen the monarchy.
I would like above all to declare my resolve to continue, with the support of my family, to serve the people of this great nation of ours to the best of my ability through the changing times ahead.
To maintain the strength of the monarchy, every one of the Queen's planned words matters.
The waging of peace is the hardest form of leadership of all.
Every word is calculated and has a purpose.
Today, the Queen addressed a multiracial legislature and paid tribute to the country's transition to democracy.
My memories of South Africa are part of me.
She's become the most famous woman in the world, and she's become one of the most famous people in the world. So clearly, whatever she says, has a great deal of weight.
In our lives, Mr. President, we have seen the worst, but also the best of our continent.
She doesn't feel she needs to speak unnecessarily, but when she does choose to speak, it's worth listening because it's going to be worth hearing.
After decades on the throne, Queen Elizabeth II is careful about what she says.
She's been trained not to give away her feelings because everything she says and does is noted, is remarked on, is reported on.
One wrong word can wreak havoc.
I remember she was going on a visit to Manchester and the speech began, "I am very pleased indeed to be back in Manchester." And the Queen changed it to, "I am pleased to be back in Manchester." Once you say you're very, very pleased about going to one city, if you don't then say it about the next city, looks like you've got favourite cities.
But on one terrible occasion, the Queen failed to speak, and it proved to be the biggest regret of her reign. In 1966, a horrific mining disaster in the Welsh village of Aberfan killed over 100 children.
The ground started to vibrate, and the next thing I remember was waking up in all this blackness around me. Could hear shouts and screams, and those particular shouts and screams got less and less as time went on.
Miners, their wives, and all who could dug sometimes with their bare hands to reach the children trapped below.
There was just thick mud on the floor, and the children were sitting at their desks, and they were all dead.
116 children and 28 adults died in the disaster. In the immediate aftermath, the Queen failed to visit and offer words of comfort. She feared she'd be a dangerous distraction. It was 8 days before the Queen spoke to the people of Aberfan.
The Queen had delayed coming here so as not to interrupt in any way the urgent work of rescue. Now she saw for herself the fearful aftermath of disaster.
The Queen found a village in mourning, whose inhabitants were grateful for the words of comfort she was bringing.
She walked towards some children, and I was close enough to see her face, and it seemed there was a change in her demeanour. Her face filled up as if she was going to cry. Then she moved a finger to the side of her eye, like that, and just 1 or 2 tears come down.
Years later, in a letter to the residents of Aberfan, the words of the Queen revealed why meeting these children affected her so deeply.
It was very, very poignant when she met the children, and that occurred, the remaining children of Aberfan.
After this heartbreaking visit, the Queen realised how much her words mattered.
She did say to her private secretary, Martin Charteris, "I feel that one of the biggest mistakes of my reign was not getting to Aberfan sooner."
She realised that actually people did want to see her and that she could do something which was very important and rather special, which other people couldn't do. It is really the ultimate sort of respect that can be paid to that community by the sovereign, and that's very important. You can't underestimate that.
In the decade since the disaster, the Queen's words reveal an ongoing interest in the village of Aberfan.
This centre looks to the future, and it will provide wonderful opportunities for all the people of the village. It stands as a symbol of the determination that out of the disaster should come a richer and a fuller life.
In 1997, when the Queen and Prince Philip visited again, survivor Jeff Edwards and the Queen shared a few words.
She's very easy to speak to. There's no sort of pauses of tension or anything. She's very good at engaging with people. She asked me what I was doing at that particular time, and I said I'd returned to Aberfan because of the problems that we had with young people who would have traditionally gone into the mining industry and basically turned to alcohol and drugs.
These brief words with Jeff left a lasting impression on the Queen.
2 weeks later, I had a call from Buckingham Palace, basically saying you were speaking to Her Majesty last week about your project, and could you send us details? Because she wanted to make a personal donation to the project.
The Queen's kind words and personal investment in Aberfan's regeneration has earned her a place in our hearts.
She saw the sorrow of those individuals who had lost children in that disaster. She saw the harm that it had caused to those survivors, and she's been part of that journey over 54 years.
The Aberfan disaster taught the Queen the importance of acting quickly. And in 2020, she faced a family crisis that put this dramatically to the test. Coming up, the Queen takes to social media and puts Harry and Meghan in their place.
The Queen actually played a blinder with the Harry and Meghan crisis.
And the Queen lets rip on her toughest year.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
Even though the Queen has shown she can embrace new technology, more often she delivers her words in a scripted speech. With the world hanging on her every word, there is no greater challenge for a speechwriter than penning words for the Queen.
I was asked, to serve up words for the Queen's speech on different occasions, but it's very hard to do it because you can't have that textured relationship with the speaker for obvious reasons. You can't sit down and chat to them about the speech.
After decades of practice, the Queen makes public speaking look effortless.
It is with humility and pleasure, on behalf of the entire country, indeed the whole free world, that I say to you all, thank you.
But ensuring the Queen's words are truly iconic is no mean feat.
A great speech is like a jigsaw. All the pieces fit. The tone, the words, the occasion, the pacing.
In 1992, the Queen delivered a speech that combined all these elements and was to become one of her most famous. At London's Guildhall, she was marking the 40th anniversary of her reign. But the Queen was in no mood to celebrate.
The Duchess kept her head well down, ignoring all questions about the state of her marriage.
That year, 3 of her children's marriages had fallen apart, and the Queen also witnessed her beloved Windsor Castle ablaze. After such devastating and embarrassing events, everyone attending wondered what the Queen was about to say.
My Lord Mayor, could I say first how delighted I am that the Lady Mayoress is here today.
The Queen's voice revealed the effects from inhaling the smoke at Windsor.
This great hall has provided me with some of the most memorable events in my life.
Her words may have been carefully scripted to reveal the horrors of her year, but humour had its place.
In the UK, this is a very big cultural tradition we have, which we all take for granted, but a lot of other cultures are amazed by. In a speech during a lunch, there has to be some humour.
To use an expression more common north of the border, this is a real gathering of the clans.
The people drafting it had, taken a lot of care, and I think the Queen herself will have taken a lot of care to get the tone of it just right.
Just 140 words in, the Queen addressed her family problems.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
She will know perfectly well that they've all been reading the papers and they know she's had a terrible year, so why not say it's been a terrible year?
In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
The Queen has got quite a dry sense of humour, so I think by choosing a Latin phrase, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. This idea that she would characterise one of the most disastrous years in her reign as an annus horribilis.
Of course, everyone there knew what she meant, and even people who don't know Latin can work out what annus horribilis means. But I think it also has the great advantage from a technique point of view of being a very good soundbite.
By using those two words, the Queen had brought Latin to the masses.
It captures the headlines. There won't be scarcely a newspaper in the world which wouldn't use that phrase. It summed up an awful lot and was therefore very effective.
The Queen then did something extraordinary. She accepted that some criticism of the royal family had been justified.
No institution, city, monarchy, whatever, should expect to be free from the scrutiny of those who give it their loyalty and support, not to mention those who don't.
The speech was extraordinary on many levels, and one was this recognition that we must be open to scrutiny and we must be accountable.
This is the big thing to understand about the Queen's speeches, is that the Queen is not someone who's looking for sympathy. She's not looking for compassion. She's the Queen.
I sometimes wonder how future generations will judge the events of this tumultuous year. I dare say that history will take a slightly more moderate view than that of some contemporary commentators.
In just 891 words, the Queen had found the perfect way to summarise her horribilis year.
It had been a terrible year. She needed to acknowledge it. That she did it so viscerally, I think, took people by surprise. But there was an element where people really admired the honesty about it.
40 years is quite a long time. I am glad to have had the chance to witness and to take part in many dramatic changes in life in this country.
If you're writing a speech for the Queen, you're writing for the audience on the day. You're writing for the Queen's family. You're writing for Republicans. You're writing for the greatest loyalists in the country, and you're writing for history.
In this speech, the Queen showed a rare glimpse into her personal feelings. But when tragedy struck at the heart of the royal family, the Queen faced a different challenge. Coming up, at only 21, Elizabeth makes one of the most important speeches of her life.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
And when the Queen's words had the power to make or break the monarchy.
I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death.
The Queen's spoken word today has been coached into delivering a more relaxed and easygoing manner.
These windows are rather difficult. Would you like to take a seat here?
But this is an enormous contrast to the young woman we saw back in 1947, when on her 21st birthday, she dedicated herself to the Commonwealth.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
I think it's an astonishing moment of public dedication where she says, "My whole life, whether it will be long or short, shall be devoted to you and to our great imperial family, the Commonwealth." It's extremely poignant and powerful.
But I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone, unless you join in it with me.
Within 5 years of making this speech, she's the queen of a vast amount of the planet with enormous responsibilities, and this woman's still on the throne into the 21st century. And I think she's done her best to fulfill the pledges that she made on that day.
God help me to make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
One of the Queen's key roles is to maintain a united Commonwealth. Her speeches are constructed for maximum impact.
We are one of the world's great convening powers, a global association of volunteers who believe in the tangible benefits that flow from exchanging ideas and experiences and respecting each other's point of view. And we seem to be growing stronger year by year.
To the Queen, it is one of the hallmarks of her reign. Started out all those years ago as just a few countries who got together.
The Governor of Tasmania waits at the foot of the gangway to welcome the royal couple to Tasmanian soil.
Now it's grown into this enormous family of more than 50 nations, some 2 billion people.
As head of the Commonwealth, her words are designed to bring these nations together.
During my reign, the Commonwealth leaders gathered together have drunk my health on 22 occasions around the world.
She has been known to say that when she goes to one of these conferences, she sees 4 prime ministers in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. They're always delighted to see her, and she feels a bit like a doctor. They come and talk about their problems.
The Queen is well versed in the art of conversation, receiving more than 100 heads of state across her reign.
The Queen weighs her words extremely carefully, which is why they often seem somewhat bland.
Some of the Queen's most touching words concern her family.
Charles, tonight's party is a tribute to all that you have achieved.
Throughout her reign, she has spoken of the comfort she receives from those closest to her.
During these years as your Queen, the support of my family has, across the generations, been beyond measure.
She saves her warmest words for the man who has been by her side throughout her reign, Prince Philip.
Prince Philip is, I believe, well known for declining compliments of any kind. But throughout, he has been a constant strength and guide.
The Queen doesn't give away her emotions or her feelings very, very readily, but on the odd occasion, she has spoken about Philip with enormous love.
All too often, I fear Prince Philip has had to listen to me speaking. Frequently, we have discussed my intended speech beforehand, and as you will imagine, his views have been expressed in a forthright manner.
Prince Philip has also shared his personal feelings for the Queen, letting us into the secrets of the success of their enduring marriage.
I think that the main lesson that we've learned is that tolerance is the one essential ingredient of any happy marriage. And you can take it from me that the Queen has the quality of tolerance and abundance.
And if there was one time the Queen relied on Philip more than ever, it was when tragedy befell her family and a crisis ensued that shook the monarchy to the core.
Just to confirm the news that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died in a car accident in Paris, which also killed her companion, Dodi Fayed.
That fateful event of August 1997 created a wave of grief across Britain and the globe. And the people wanted their Queen. Yet she stayed silent. She was in Balmoral, her Scottish castle, with Charles and his sons, when she was told the news of Diana's death. and she decided to reserve her consoling words for William and Harry.
The Queen's instinct was to be grandmother first before monarch, just for a few days.
But the nation didn't see it that way. It was in grief and wanted words of comfort from her.
The Queen herself, I think, was utterly bewildered by this demand that she, the grandmother of these children who just lost their mother, that she should leave them, come down to London. She was bewildered by the fact that she was asked to emote in public.
At 11 a.m., 5 hours after Diana's death, words came. But these weren't from the Queen, but from Prime Minister Tony Blair.
She was the people's princess. And that's how she will stay, how she will remain.
What the Prime Minister did was to try and fill that vacuum and take criticism away from the royal family by talking warmly of the princess as the people's princess.
But the nation was not satisfied.
I think it's disgusting that they have not appeared or said a word.
They wanted the Queen. After 5 days of silence, the Queen finally agreed to deliver a speech on the advice of Downing Street.
She was sort of wrong-footed for one of the few times in her career, and we can see the government stepping in and getting it right. And of course, Tony Blair had a very good feel for what the public expected. Down she came, and we know from Alistair Campbell's diaries that there was a lot of toing and froing about what she should say.
Although she had a script, it was put together very quickly, and some of the language was sort of added literally almost at the last minute. And it would have been, alien to her to have to go on television like that without a lot of preparation.
The Mall was packed with thousands of people, all waiting for her announcement. One person in that crowd had a sneak preview of her words, royal correspondent Wesley Kerr.
So I was a few yards away outside Buckingham Palace, and over my earphones I heard her say, just one run through, and heard her rehearsing this astonishing 3-minute speech.
At 6 p.m, the Queen spoke to a grieving and angry nation. Her people waited with bated breath.
Since last Sunday's dreadful news, we have seen throughout Britain and around the world an overwhelming expression of sadness at Diana's death.
This was absolutely at the very height of New Labour glory and spin and all this energy they brought to presentation of policy. It's framed against the window at Buckingham Palace looking out, and the crowds are there.
We have all been trying in our different ways to cope. It is not easy to express the sense of loss.
Queen realised that this is the moment that I've got to be the Queen. This is the moment where I've got to lead from the front and where I've got to slightly loosen the way I project myself.
We have all felt those emotions in these last few days. So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart.
Of course, she doesn't say as a mother-in-law. I mean, there is what she says and what she doesn't say. I mean, she could have said as a mother, as a grandmother, and as a bereaved mother-in-law.
This week at Balmoral, we have all been trying to help William and Harry come to terms with the devastating loss that they and the rest of us have suffered.
She was very, very bleakly trying to do was just to get everyone to remember, the children in all this. The Queen is perhaps just sending a signal, the monarchy goes on, the next 2 generations of kings are already with us, let's just remember that.
I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death.
Oh, it's rather moving, isn't it? This is the most tumultuous moment of the Queen's reign, and she showed her and the monarchy's ability to bounce back, and even in times of difficulty, try and bring people together. This was decisive action in a week when she must have still been grieving and still reeling and looking after those grandchildren.
May those who died rest in peace. And may we, each and every one of us, thank God for someone who made many, many people happy.
Almost immediately, Wesley witnessed the healing effect of the Queen's words.
It was astonishing to feel the crowd softening and to feel the crowds who'd said, "We want leadership, we want you to show more compassion." And she responded.
At the Queen's broadcast, she said lessons must be learned from not only from Diana's life, but from her death. And I think that was put into practice. The palace became even more accessible. Big parties were held, people were invited into the gardens. They opened up. They've tried very hard to communicate with the public on a more human level.
I'm delighted to have my handbag back.
This modern, easygoing nature that we see today is also reflected in how the Queen's words sound. But this evolution in how the Queen speaks has been 6 decades in the making. When we first heard the Queen's words,
I was delighted to accept the invitation of the Association to be their guest today.
the world was a very different place. The Queen's accent was the epitome of high society. But as the world has become less formal, so has the Queen. Through the years, the Queen has moved away from sounding like an aristocratic girl guide to more like one of us.
Whether it be long or short.
Year after year, the Queen has changed her spoken word in order to better connect with her people. As phonetics and pronunciation professor Jane Setter observes.
And to the service of our great imperial family, to which we all belong.
In the 40s, when we first have a clip of her speaking in 1947, during that period and during the time that she came to the throne, it was an aspirational kind of accent. And people assume that if you have this accent, you're well off and you're educated.
But I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone, unless you join in it with me, as I now invite you to do.
You to do. She pronounces it as you to do. It sounds very, very posh and upper class and very distant.
Jane pinpoints another change the Queen has made that makes her sound more accessible.
We do know that we are passing on to our children the power to change their whole environment.
So I'm looking at the bit where she says, we do know, and the vowel in do is different from the vowel in the 1947 clip. So she doesn't say we do know, but she says we do know.
We do know that we are passing on to our children.
This attempt to sound more natural has continued throughout the Queen's reign.
Frustrated, I want to say a word of thanks.
She says thanks. She doesn't say thanks.
And I include all those who don't realise that they deserve thanks.
If she was still using the old-fashioned type vowel, that may be perceived as distant and negative. I don't know if we've got friendliness here, and I don't really know if she's going for friendliness, to be honest, because she's always trying to be a point of stability. This is my Christmas message to you. And she's trying to be the monarch.
It is important to keep discussing issues that concern us all. There can be no more valuable role for our family of nations.
In this one, I get the sense that the way that she's speaking, it seems more natural. I think the way that she's adapted over time shows that she is trying to appeal to the people to some extent. There's much more public visibility, much more opportunity to meet and speak to people from different parts of society. That might have a bearing. But again, it's not always something that's conscious.
The Queen's words give reassurance at a time of crisis. During her 68-year reign, the Queen has increasingly been parachuted into the aftermaths of disaster and terrorist attack. Like here in 2017, after the Manchester concert bombing.
Yeah, that's your legs. Very wicked. You had enjoyed the concert, presumably?
Yeah, it was really good.
Was it?
Yeah.
The advisors have on the whole felt that it is important that she should go very soon after an accident of that kind, because it's very effective.
Oh, I think it's a shock, isn't it?
Big shock. Really big shock.
People are so happy to see her because they know she's not doing it because she wants to be photographed looking good. She's doing it for them.
The bomb went off as it was outside the British Medical Association.
Crisis after crisis, the Queen has been sent in to raise the spirit of her people through her words.
I want to express my admiration for the people of our capital city who, in the aftermath of yesterday's bombings, are calmly determined to resume their normal lives. You were in one of the trains?
Yes, I was in the train that went through the streets at Aldgate.
It was very important for the Queen to feel that people could publicly and physically see from her and hear from her. That's always been very important to her.
Amid the growing anger underneath a concrete flyover close to Grenfell Tower, the Queen arrived with Prince William.
Yes, it was an appalling sight.
It's an appalling sight, she said, after hearing about the flames.
In times of crisis, we do look to the monarchy, and specifically the monarch, for a little bit of reassurance, to be reminded that everything will be all right in the end. And because of her wealth of experience and also her age, people do look up to her and listen to what she has to say.
The most recent disaster on an unprecedented scale, and one that more than ever calls for her reassuring words, was the coronavirus pandemic.
The Queen leading by example, leaving London with Prince Philip tonight to begin their home isolation at Windsor Castle.
She's provided a national balm during a time of crisis by just always being there and always being a reassuring figure.
She talks about the attributes of self-discipline, of quiet, good-humoured resolve. And those adjectives she's using there, this sense of quiet resolve, it is something I think we like to see ourselves in that way.
An incredible 24 million British viewers saw the Queen deliver these important words.
The Queen's words have huge power always, but particularly during coronavirus. There was a feeling of deep unease and anxiety in the country. The Queen has lived through turmoil, she's lived through the war, and I think that by hearing from her that very reassuring voice of experience, I think it was a real message of hope.
The idea that she was channeling her inner forces sweetheart in using that line from Dame Vera Lyng's song about "we will meet again," I think really captured the mood.
That song is all about victory and hope and overcoming difficult times. And I think the Queen wanted to end her address looking forwards to much more positive times when people will be together again.
But the wartime generation, my generation, is resilient.
The Second World War has been a constant in the Queen's speeches. Starting with her very first broadcast at the age of 14, calmly addressing the nation during wartime. As head of the armed forces, she acknowledges the sacrifices made by many, including those who took part in the D-Day landings.
In the cause of freedom. In a broadcast to the nation at that time, my father, King George VI, said, "What is demanded from us all is something more than courage and endurance. We need a revival of spirit, a new unconquerable resolve." That is exactly what those brave men brought to the battle, as the fate of the world depended on their success.
The Queen's wartime speeches, and those at times of crisis, are delivered to create maximum impact.
One of the things people do, if you look at many speeches, is talk too fast. And you will, on the whole, never go wrong by slowing right down. You let the silence do the talking.
Despite lockdown, the Queen addressed the nation on the 75th anniversary of VE Day.
The Queen had made an address to the nation like that just a handful of times in her reign, but she wanted to absolutely make sure that, even in a lockdown, the nation takes a moment, a day, to recognise, heroes, the bravery and service of people who served during the Second World War.
I just have a feeling, when I look at this VE Day speech and the COVID speech, there's a certain sense of her summing things up a little bit here. This is the life I've had. This is the times I've lived through. And I think when you're over 90, you're entitled to do that. And it's astonishing how beautifully she articulates it.
The Queen's words have served as a backdrop to all our lives.
Her Majesty goes to dedicate herself to her people.
From her first humble words as our Queen.
Will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
I solemnly promise so to do.
We have witnessed her words make history.
When I was 21, I pledged my life to the service of our people. I do not regret nor retract one word of it.
But I shall not have strength to carry...
During which she honed her speeches for us.
The way that she's adapted over time shows that she is trying to appeal to the people.
And we have observed her words grow more personal over the years.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
We've heard her build bridges.
We have all been trying in our different ways to cope. It is not easy to express a sense of loss.
Her choice of words are like her reign, carefully thought out, aiming to create stability, continuity, and remind the nation of the importance of a devotion to duty.
Over the years, I have observed that some attributes of leadership are universal and are often about finding ways of encouraging people.
She is this force for continuity and stability, this quiet backbone of our country. She has seen crisis after crisis, and she has wisdom she can impart.
We also take pride in our tradition of fairness and tolerance. The consolidation of our richly multicultural and multi-faith society. A major development since 1952 is being achieved remarkably peacefully and with much goodwill.
That's one of the marvels of what we can do, is to think about how our own lives have changed over that period and how somehow yet through all those changes the Queen has been there talking to us. It's quite striking.
Change has become a constant. Managing it has become an expanding discipline. The way we embrace it defines our future.